You saw, you know, if you saw Figgy's Excel sheets on what we do with, all of our logistics, it would blow your mind. We have our next 250 stores planned out on an Excel sheet.
250. Are you going nationwide then? And is that a 5-year plan, 10-year plan?
I'm actually going global, brother. Like this is yeah,
Thinking too small, Mitch. You're
yeah,
thinking too
yeah.
small.
Good.
Yeah. What
Looks
is that?
excellent.
Is that your office back there?
This is I call it the dojo. It's kind of like my lab office, kind of where I can have, my safe, quiet place where I'm not. I used to do all my stuff in my kitchens, but I keep getting kicked out of them, and it's so noisy. So I just got myself a little tiny kind of like work studio.
I
Oh,
love
that's
it.
awesome.
Yeah, and I have
I
a
like
big
how
I
you
have
did
a
this.
big pizza oven in the I don't know if you can see it, but I have a big giant pizza oven out on the deck.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like the design. How it looks. It looks like a workshop. How you did like the pegboard with all the different
Oh
tools.
yeah, yeah. That's called Noline. I stole it from one of my favorite artists, Tom Sachs, out of New York.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
Well,
really
I think
cool.
everything you do is uniquely. That's why we wanted to have you on the podcast. So obviously we're excited to have you, and you came. I know, like even just talking to you at the event we had wasn't enough time to go through everything that you're doing. And it's funny because now that we've been kind of out and about talking about, like inviting people to these events, and people are asking who's coming. And I was talking to a guy who's a friend of mine who's a surgeon, and I was telling him, oh yeah, this guy, awesome guy, Lee, came to our event, owns Moto Pizza. He's like, oh, I've seen that. I go to Indian Wells every year, and me and my wife get that pizza. And I'm like, wow, that's so crazy how it's like, this guy lives out here, and very well known. So yeah, it's cool to see what you're doing.
Oh yeah, when I'm in LA, I'm shocked when I bump into somebody that knows me. It's shocking.
It's awesome, man. But one thing that I'm very curious of, I kind of caught it when you were talking to someone else, but like, let's start, like, walk us through your like entrepreneurial journey. Like, I know this moto is pretty recent, but what's that been like for you just starting out?
I'll tell you, for entrepreneurs, this is quite a story. So my wife and I had backpackers hostels for about 16 years now.
Oh,
And we started, man, in the early 2000s. And I met her backpacking. So I love to travel and I love eating. And so it was a perfect thing to really enjoy. And uh, I just fell in love with traveling. So I would often go traveling, but I would stay in backpackers hostels because it was the cheapest way to go. And I actually met my wife in a backpackers hostel when she was coming up from Mexico, and she's Canadian from Toronto. She's full on Italian, and we hit it off. And she we started dating between Toronto and then Vancouver, and then I'm just like, come down here, let's figure it out. So we got married, and we ended up opening up a small backpackers hostel that surprisingly won all kinds of awards because we ended up like really building it around the community of food. So I would take kids foraging, I would take them fishing, squid jigging, crabbing, and then we would come back and we would make dinners. And that's kind of how we became famous. We got rated like number one hostel in the United States and number two in all of North America. And
Whoa.
so it was a big deal. So people came to us specifically because we did food. And often during that 18 years, 16 years, I keep raising it up, I would make pizza. And I really fell in love with the process of pizza. And I said, when I'm going to retire, I'm going to make pizza. And I said that for a long time. Then COVID hit and we lost everything. So we had three locations, one in Ballard, one in Fremont, and one in Belltown. And when we lost everything, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pivot and do pizza. And I said, all I have to make is 40 pizzas a day and we can survive. And boy, even our first day, it got out and it was insane. We opened on a Wednesday, and we sold everything for on Wednesday for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Yeah, it was insane.
Where'd the community come from? That like, was that the hostel community that was like, because you were so known in those circles, those people like, it was exciting that way, or like what
No, it was funny story. I was on my roof putting up balloons on top of the roof because we're in between two giant apartment buildings and it's a little tiny bungalow, like a 1-bedroom house. And this old guy comes up and is like, "Hey, can I take pictures of you up on the roof?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "I want to put it on my little vlog." I'm like, "Do people even do vlogs anymore?" That was the kind of my joke. And turns out he has like, I don't know, something like 700,000 subscribers, and he knows people at Eater. And so Eater put it out that same day, and it was the day that we opened, and we didn't know.
Oh,
So
wow.
we just had this onslaught of people. And yeah, and it's been crazy ever since. It just didn't stop from the opening day.
So,
Wow, that's insane.
so before the hostel, so 16 years you had the hostel.
Yeah.
What were you doing before that?
So I was one of those guys that did a little bit of everything. I did, water construction, which is like bridges, cofferdams, anything that had to do with the water, piers, things like that. I was a tree topper. I was a waiter. Man, I did a lot. I did commercial fishing in Alaska. So I was up on the boats in the Bering Sea. Yeah, I did some stuff, man.
That's awesome. And it seems like, like one of the things you're talking about here, like obviously like that's kind of serendipitous that guy took the pictures and like posted that same day. But it seems like, just from even just knowing you for a little bit and like looking at all the stuff that you've done, it seems like you just continuously get lucky. But I believe in like, you don't really just get lucky, you make your own luck, right? Like it seems like you just say yes to everything. Like we just talked to you about doing that amazing thing at Benaroya Hall, cooking with the symphony, and like, what is that like just your philosophy? You just say yes to everything, and that's just how it goes, and then you just get lucky off that. Like what's led to all these serendipitous moments for you?
Yeah, exactly. Nailed it on the head. We are, I feel like we are, very connected beings, meaning that if you put it out there and I talk to everybody, and you never know when an opportunity is going to come up, and when we got into the stadium, for example, I would walk down my line because we have big lines, and I would walk down the line. I would just say hello to all the customers, and just have open up conversations. They'd ask about the business and stuff. I actually got 3 of my investors out of going down the line and saying hello to people. So I think it's really about just telling your story as much as you can, and yeah, say yes to everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've noticed, like, just from your social media, I think Mitch was telling me you were like cleaning the kitchen in Belltown, and then 2 nights ago I saw you were like at another location making pizzas with the team, and there was like that big rush at the end. I saw you posted about that. It's like you really keep your boots on the ground at all the different locations. Is that why you're just still trying to stay involved at that level and create those moments for yourself? Or like what's the philosophy there?
I think for any small business owner, as they grow, I think when you begin to go into multiple locations, it's easy to dilute what you created, right? There's a certain amount of compromise that comes in when you scale. And what I found is, I call it, touching the business, meaning that you're physically there, touching the business, saying hello to your staff and your people. And I think that goes a long ways in keeping in touch with what's going on, and um, yeah, I think it's really important to go to the locations as much as you can. And obviously, I can't hit everyone every day, but I try. We're at the end of this year, we're going to have 11 locations. So that's getting to where it's going to, and it's going to be in California too. So, yeah, I think it's really important just kind of keep in touch with with what's happening on the front lines.
Yeah, I love that, man. just listening to your story now, it's funny. Like, it seems like when we met you, I'm like, man, this guy is so interesting. But hearing about all the things you've done, it's like, yeah, that's how you become interesting. You do all these things, you say yes to all these things, and you just like put yourself out there. I'm sure you met so many people either traveling or coming in through your hostel that like you kind of stacked all these skills, and now it's making sense how like this moto like kind of took off like that, because you put all that work in on doing all those other things, and you just kind of put everything that's interesting into Moto Pizza. So that's really cool to see. What I want to know is, how did you create this 3-month wait list for pizza? And like, do you think it's recreatable, or do you think it was just like, no, like Moto's is just the one? Walk us through that.
I kind of think it was the perfect storm, right? We just came up, we were in COVID, people wanted to get out of the house. Um, I created something really kind of different that set us apart from other pizza, just from the virality of the appearance of the pizza, right? Because that was one of the first ones, not the first, but to kind of start bringing, this style of pizza to the front, and to the public. And, when and our demand was so high, like I didn't create it, it happened. We got such a long line of wait, and people, I hated turning people away when they waited for so long, and it happened often. They would wait like 2 hours in line, and then they're like, we'd be sold out, and I'm like, hey, so sorry you waited so long. And I decided to, we found out that we can utilize kind of more of like an organized, you know, pickup time, that a lot of people do now. But it wasn't really huge, during COVID, because people were just figuring that out. And that that ended up really organizing things. And so we did that next day, but it would sell out seconds. And we're like, okay, let's put it out a week. And then it's like, okay, let's put it out a month. And the demand was like, hey, I can't get a pizza. And so we went out 3 months, and I'm like, I'm not going further than 3 months, because we don't know what's going to happen in 3 months. What if there's a fire and I can't, you know, take care of those, 2 months of people ahead?
Yeah.
And because you would order and you would pay the full amount when you ordered, and then you would wait for the 3 months.
Wow.
And so you can, and that's actually how I was able to even start to scale, because it was almost like, this nice chunk of money that I can kind of start to slowly scale with. But robbing Peter to pay Paul, there's a cost. So, it was tight while I grew and trying to make payroll. And, it was quite a challenge.
That's a really interesting, like almost like a cash flow problem, where it's like the reverse, where you think like, oh, getting all your money up front, that's awesome. But like you said, if you start to use that to scale instead of buy the ingredients to fulfill the orders in the future, you're playing like a pretty risky game. That's interesting. And so like, as you use that to kind of create scale, you were just like all chips on the table, saying like, hey, we're going to continue to make enough money in future orders to continue to finance the orders that I have to do for the next few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, there were points where I was like, okay, who do I pay first?
Yeah.
Like it was like, I always took care of my employees. That was number one. So like, there were vendors I'd be like, hey, are you cool if I, pay you next week? Or, it got that tight. And, fortunately, when you build great relationships, people are more than willing to give you a little wiggle room to make things work. And, that's exactly what happened. So we have great vendors. They're still with us today. And, they're like family to us.
Yeah, man, that's an amazing thing. And I'm sure that's stressful. Are you a pretty risk averse person in general? Or are you like, you're just like risk tolerance is higher than most people?
As an entrepreneur, you guys know this. You have to be like, you got to be able to swing for the fences and be able to, I mean, essentially, anytime you take that jump, you're risking everything, right? You may not think it. You might think like, oh, how am I going to mitigate this risk and mitigate this thing? And you're really not. Like, you're all in when you're an entrepreneur. There's no other choice but fail or success, right? There's no in between.
Well, I think that's what is for someone who's creating something as special and scaling as fast as you, it's like that has to be. But I think that's what keeps a lot of people that I know, at least as small businesses, where they're afraid to hire. They don't want to inflate their payroll. They want to stay as like, they want to stay in that one house that you started out of West Seattle. They want to just, hey, let me just do what's safe and comfortable. And because, you don't want to be stressed, because that is we've been through those stresses of like opening locations and like having our house, against the lease and, all that kind of stuff. And like, we've been through all that. And like, some people just don't want that. Like, you know what? I guess, is that just how it's been for you? Was that how it was with the hostels as well? Like, was it higher risk, or was that like, did it feel like you bootstrapped that a little bit differently?
I am a notorious bootstrapper. It's just in my genes, right?
Yeah.
And even it's weird now having money to buy new equipment. When there were times where I was like driving down the road and I'd see on the corner a free chair and I would grab the chair. Like, I still have that in the original Moto. Like it's there's that bootstrapping nature that you have, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the entrepreneur going, I want this one spot and I'm happy with it, because there's a thing about like honing your craft, right? When you scale, it's really difficult to hone your craft to express fully what you want to do and what you want to be. And so I actually have a great respect. Some of my favorite pizza makers are one pizza shops like Uno, and like Franco Pepe in Italy. My favorite DeFara is Dom DeMarca, rest his soul. Like his little tiny shop, he refused to grow until he passed away, and then his family decided to grow his shop. Like, those guys I really admire. I even thought that of myself when I was going to do my pizzas, but things changed up to where I'm like, wow, I can scale. And then that's when I went all in. And what's funny is I'm kind of dreaming about down the road where I can come back and have my own little tiny one shop. So, everything comes full circle, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, tell us about some of the things you've been up to. You started with the 3-month wait, and then you got into the stadium. Do you think that was kind of the hockey stick moment, or like how did this scale really start to happen for you?
I'll tell you that's actually a funny story. Is I hurt my arm because I made my dough by hand. So I made it in this big giant wooden box that's called a dough trowel. And the dough trowel, I would make it by hand, and I had this motion that I would twist my arm when I did the dough, and I got like tennis elbow. I couldn't even squeeze my dough because I could barely bend my elbow and twist it. And I'm like, I need to get a mixer. And, when I went and got the mixer and I made the dough with the mixer, I could tell there was a difference, but it was so minimal that I'm like, wow, I don't think customers are going to realize this. And then I noticed customers didn't realize that I switched from hand to mixer. And then that's when the light bulb went off and I'm like, I can scale this. And then that's when I started thinking how to scale. What do I do? And, I started thinking equipment wise. And then I started thinking, oh, farmers markets, no. Concerts, no. Stadiums. And then that's when I started, hunting, knocking on doors to get into stadiums.
Yeah. And you've got, I mean, that's what I was so impressed with you from even our first conversation, was like, you have so many cool technology advances that you're using in your pizza shops. Like, obviously you've got the pizza robot, you've shown videos of that, like making pizzas, and like, we talked about drones. Maybe you should talk about that a little bit, like what you're using technology wise to make this happen. Because then I think the other interesting thing is, like, a lot of people, I think they get romantic about how they make their pizza. Like, a lot of people probably wouldn't want to switch from hand, because that's part of the story, like the hand rolled dough or whatever. But it's like you said, you can't really scale to a large business and supply everybody that you need to supply if you're doing everything by hand like that. And so, like, you've really embraced the technology and like doing all that kind of stuff. Which I think has been really cool. And I think it's going to be a huge success for you too.
Yeah. I guess it comes around again to where we talked about being all in, right? And when I kind of realized that I can scale, I just went all in. And when I talk about craftsmanship, a lot of people, like you just said, Zach, they have this idea of craftsmanship and building it with your hands. And what I realized was that the mixer is simply a tool, and just like a wooden spoon is a tool. And what I realized was, and it was almost like an epiphany, it was that it is the intention in which you create what you're doing that matters. So that intention of craftsmanship, that intention of some an artistic something that you're expressing yourself through, it's not the tool that matters. And when that went off, I'm like, oh my gosh, I went to town. I started thinking like, what are ways that we can do, pizzas that are, faster, efficient, and I can put more out, but I don't lose my intention of putting out this beautiful pizza that tastes really good and that has amazing ingredients. And that's when I was like discovered robotics, and labor is a huge issue these days, right? And it's not like I'm looking to replace my employees. It's just that there are a lot of mundane tasks that are not necessary to be done by somebody. So you can give somebody a job that's much more interesting than folding boxes, for example, right? So
Right.
I'm working on a robot that folds boxes, and that's all it does. It's a box folding robot, and um, and my end game is to build a fully autonomous pizza restaurant. But that's going to be like a place of use, like for example, at a university. I'll still keep my brick and mortars where you'll walk up and see me in the shop and I'll say hi. We'll always hold on to that. But there's also a great use case for a fully autonomous place like at a university. And so how do I get my pizza from the point of making it to the customer, right? And then that's where the delivery idea came from. And I partnered with Zipline. I actually reached out to them because they began with getting medicines to remote villages. And then the way I understand the story is that he came here and kind of commercialized it so he can raise money to continue his dream of getting medicine to remote villages. And then that's how he got it. He went big, and I love that story. And so the drone delivery is not the only delivery I'm looking at. Like there's Coco, that is the small robots on wheels that go from location to home. So there's a whole bunch of like robot delivery things that are happening. So I'm just implementing as much as I can in that kind of, from me to the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of the things that I think about with that too, because I was just talking to my wife the other day about like AI and like replacing people. I'm like, it doesn't necessarily replace people, because like there's a lot of jobs that used to exist that no longer exist. But like you said, I like we said, like people can do a lot more interesting stuff now. Like, you can free up people to develop and do things and build a business rather than, like you said, folding boxes or adding cheese to a pizza crust. It's like, I think that's a really cool thing. And I mean, obviously like the autonomous pizza places, I think these kind of places are going to be definitely necessary, because like you said, labor is hard to find and people to do this kind of stuff. And obviously like when we think about business, and like anyone you've ever heard talk about business, they're always like, restaurants are the hardest industry to work in. And I think it's probably like a combination of the margins that are there, the difficulty of finding the people. And I've always been surprised. Like I remember working with a guy who owned a large pizza chain in Seattle. And he was telling me how many people it takes to just operate one of his restaurants. And I was blown away. It was like 90 employees for like one of his pizza restaurants, which I thought was insane. What do you think has like led to your success in like the most difficult industry? Is it just purely like that kind of stuff, like the technology, or like how do you maintain the culture and all that stuff? We were talking to a friend of ours who owns smoothie shops, and he was just talking about how hard it is to find employees that are going to be consistent and work hard and actually want to work and not close down the shop an hour or two early, like those kind of things. It's kind of seems like you've really figured it out. What's that? What's the secret?
That's a deep question, right? Like that's the $1 million question. And I think that like, this is all about relationships, right? Um, and I I have a very low turnover rate, and I attribute that to number one, how well can I take care of my employees? So I pay really well. I offer health care, and I'm working on, getting a 401k where I'm investing, back into them. And I'm very transparent in everything I do. Like we have a little newsletter that goes out to our staff every month that tells them not just what we're doing, but what we're planning. And so we try to be as transparent as possible, and when we say, hey, we need to cut labor back, we say, hey, here's why, we need to we're fine tuning what we're doing. So here's why we're figuring out our labor. Those are the little things. So instead of just saying, oh, why is my hours switched or why am I cut back? We're like, hey guys, you're gonna see an adjustment happening because we're tightening up labor. And that's just an example, right?
Mhm.
And with our growth, um, managing that is a challenge too. And so when we pull somebody from a store to like train in another store, that's somewhere we got to watch the labor. So instead of just pulling from the store, we say, hey, here's what's going on, guys. We're going to be really tight at this store because we're taking somebody here. And I think so communication is really, really critical in and being transparent in that. So there's nothing unexpected. And I think that's a really important way that it's forgotten on taking care of your people, right? Because when they know what's happening, there's no surprises. And so they feel heard, because they're like, hey, we know what's going on. And so I think that's really critical, especially now with all the noise that's going on. It's very hard to be heard. And so I think that's really important. I mentioned that a lot in a lot of things that I do, making sure that your family is heard, your wife or boyfriend or partners or significant others, the people that you work with, your even the people above you, your boss, they need to feel heard too, and um, I think that's really important in that aspect of people and labor. So those relationships are really important, even the people that you work with, all your vendors and things like that. So I think that's really critical in building the business and scaling. Just keeping your feet on the ground and staying grounded in that way, I think is really important. It's easy to get lost when you're scaling, especially as fast as I am.
Is it pretty easy for you guys to find people now? Because it's like the hype around Moto, people want to join. Like, there's a movement there.
I would say, yeah, to a certain degree, because I actually have people like, hey, we heard you're opening up in Pioneer Square. Like, how, can I get in on it? Um, Word gets around, so to speak, in your industry if you're taking care of your people. And I'll make mistakes and I'll screw things up, but I always try to fix them and try to be as clear as possible. And I like to think that we are a good employer and that we take care of our people. And hopefully this continues because I haven't had a lot of difficulty so far in bringing in staff
And I think,
and hiring.
the other thing to your benefit is like you do a really good job telling the story as well. And so I think like people are united. Like I want to go work at a Moto Pizza because I want to be united behind your vision and where you guys are going. And I think like that's really helped, I'm sure, a lot because we know that people want to work for something and doing something cool. Like, I think that's why startups work. People take pay cuts to work at startups just because they want to work on something exciting. And I think like what you're doing, obviously, in the food industry is extremely exciting comparatively to, a lot of what's out there these days. Like you're kind of starting a brand in the food industry. Like I just haven't seen a ton of that like around that people like doing the stuff that you're doing, which is cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that kind of authenticity comes from what I was talking about earlier, keeping your feet on the ground, your boots in the battle, it, even though I'm getting bigger, I still feel and I think I'm still perceived as kind of like a smaller underdog, and I think even as we grow more, I saw that with Starbucks early on, right? As they expanded huge, they were all about this kind of coffee culture. And as they grew, even though they became gigantuous, for the longest time, they were still considered an underdog, right? And I think that's really interesting. I think it's a cautionary tale to watch as you're growing that you don't lose that. You know, I think Mod Pizza is another example of that. They grew really big and kind of were like an underdog for the longest time. And, I think we can learn from that as we scale our businesses to keep that authenticity rolling as long as possible.
100%. A question that I have is like, you're obviously a pretty creative guy, and how do you keep that creativity as you scale, right? Because like from Zach and I's perspective, scaling can kind of like dampen that down. It's like, all right, I'm doing the same thing, then that's what you want to create. Like you want to create this system of the same things and just repeat it. How do you keep that creativity alive in your business?
And I think that is one of the best entrepreneur questions I've been asked in a while, Mitch, because I think that's a forgotten thing. A lot of entrepreneurs tend to lose themselves in the growth of their business. And again, this is, you'll hear me repeat that again, keeping your feet on the ground is making sure that number one, as an entrepreneur, that you're just simply taking care of yourself, both, mentally and physically. Like I've been eating a lot of crap, and I know that it's been affecting me physically. And so like I'm starting to make some changes because I'm aware of that. And I'm trying not to put it on the back burner because it's about me growing this business. So to keep my creativity, I do things like this with you guys. It sparks the creative nature that's in me, that flame going. And so even though I'm building this business, I'm sure I try to be really conscious of how I'm compartmentalizing these different aspects of myself. And I think keeping my creativity just as important as building the logistics of the business, just being aware of that, I think is really important. And yeah, that's how I keep my creativity going. And I've got great creative people around me that inspire me all the time.
And I guess like the other part of that, the other flip side is, you want predictable outcomes in your business too, right? Like you want everyone to be able to experience the pizza that you create. So how, that process, like, so you create these like designs in the lab. For example, I just saw I think you're eating a crab pizza. You make that design in the lab, you test it. Do you like pilot that out to one location? How does that rollout happen for you to make sure that like the creativity doesn't become something that can't be managed at the amount of locations that you have? And like, does every idea work at every location? Like, are some of them you can only test in West Seattle and like you can't bring it to the stadium? Or like, tell me about that process.
Well, funny story. We actually have all the same pizzas that we started with, and with the exception of the chopped cheese. That was my inspiration from New York, the chopped cheese sandwich. We took that off the menu because although a lot of people loved it, it wasn't a high seller. So we took that off the menu with the idea of replacing it, and we never did. I just started the idea of doing a seasonal pizza that we can do a fall, spring, winter, summer kind of thing, and we haven't rolled that out yet, so I really can't answer how do we do that, because we've had the same pizzas from the beginning and they're selling really well,
and all of them are at all the locations.
Yeah,
which it's a pretty big menu, so like you can get the full vegan line over at the stadium.
No, the stadium is the exception because
Gotcha.
we'll do at the stadiums, we do between 1,000 and 3,000 pizzas in a day.
Yep.
And, to do our entire menu, I think would be near impossible until I get the robotics fully going. So we, at the stadium, we just do our 5, what we call our core pizzas that we do at caterings and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you guys have robots at all the locations doing stuff, or is that
no, just for the stadiums, because the robotics right now, it only makes sense, right? like both logistically and financially if you're doing big numbers. Like to bring in a $100,000 robot to a small mom and pop shop that's selling, less than 100 pizza a day makes no sense. But kind of like, any technology, as it moves forward, the price comes down. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of betting on, because I can see, a licensing deal somehow when I build these robotics out, the price comes down. In the future, I can see leasing these robots or licensing them out for smaller shops when the price comes down, because I know it will eventually.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other interesting venue you have is the Indian Wells. Obviously, I mentioned in the very beginning. So that tennis tournament, it's a tennis tournament, one time a year. Is there anything else running down there?
No, it's kind of crazy. So that is owned by a well-known billionaire, and he did that just for the tennis open. But they have tennis events there, and that's it, but it's really just built for that, because that tennis tournament in the, what is it, 12 days, um, is built to take care of the entire year of the space.
So what is operationally, what does that look like for you guys? You guys bring employees down from your other locations? Like, what?
Yeah.
That seems like a really tough business, because you were telling us about the volume you did at that tournament, which is insane amounts of volume of pizza. What does the operation of that look like? Because that's a pretty fascinating. It's like a pop-up, but it's like it's predictable because it's coming every year. But at the same time, like, you're only going, what is it, 11 days or so?
Yeah, it's a 12-day deal. And I do fly, I have what I call my go team. I fly them down. We stay at a hotel right by there for the entire 12 days, longer, because we have to do setup and breakdown. And it's a brick and mortar in Stadium One. There's two stadiums in this location. And so we have an inside in our location, we have an inside access for everybody in the stadium, and then we have outdoor access for everybody that comes to see the tournament. Now, here's what's crazy. It's kind of like a Taylor Swift concert. People come to the stadium, even though they can't get in, and they hang out outside, and they, like, hundreds and hundreds of people watch the big screen on the outside of the stadium, and in hopes to catch one of the tennis stars. I mean, it's like a concert. Like, these people love the tennis players, or like the same way they love some of the big stars of the world, right?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me. So we're serving on the inside and the outside of the stadium, and we'll do, like, right around, like, our biggest day was 3,500 pizzas in one day. So yeah, we pumped, and to have a crew that knows what we're doing. This year we're going to be able to hire more, because now we're opening in California, so I don't have to bring my whole crew down. But yeah, it's a logistical nightmare to you're basically bringing a restaurant to California, building it up, and then breaking it down in, like, 2 weeks.
But
You have
you bring all the equipment down there too.
No, we now have a permanent location in there. So now we just bring down our crew, and then we send all of our dry goods down there.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That goes back to what Zach said earlier, though. Like, seems like you just say yes to a lot of things and, like, figure it out. And, like, I saw this quote. It was like, the people that win at life are the ones that say yes and figure out how to make it happen later. It seems like that's been kind of your motto with all this, which is awesome.
Yeah. I have a thing that I love to tell people: jump and build the plane on the way down. And that's really true. When the people who run the Mariner Stadium that we're at, they actually said, because we killed it when we went there, we broke all the sales records. We were up in the top floor. For those of you who don't know, we're on the top floor of the stadium, in probably the worst location you can be in, and we killed it there and broke all sales records. So they were like, "Hey, we have another stadium in California. Would you be interested in that?" And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't even know what was it about or what was going on. I'm just like, "I'm interested. Let's do it."
Yeah.
And that was crazy. It was literally building a restaurant in, like, 8 weeks.
Well, because I imagine, like, there's a lot of people out there that would not have said yes to this opportunity, because they're like, 11 days. That seems like a lot of, like, logistics. Have to, like, have a whole team in a hotel. Like, that's the differentiator, I think, is like your willingness to just like kind of be uncomfortable and figure things out as they go. Cause I think a lot of people just want to know exactly what it's going to be like going in. It's like, hey, can I come down there? Can I visit you and see what it's like? And then it's like, by that time, that person's probably thinking, I need to sign somebody to fill this space. I can't tour you the facility and like you figure out whether you want to do it or not.
Have you
You
done
said
any?
it. Go ahead, Mitch.
Oh, I was gonna say, have you done anything like that just you're like, that did not work out, but we say yes to everything. So
This is a good one because everybody sees all the golden stuff, right? I fail more than I succeed. And I think Michael Jordan said that. What did he say? I take, out of the 50 game-winning shots I make, I've done like 1,000 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like my failure rate is very high, but you don't see that because, you said it earlier, Zach, when you talked about like an entrepreneur that wants to stay in one spot it's safe. But I think the safety is illusionary because even if you're in one spot, things are going to come at you and you're going to have to figure it out, right? So when you scale and you go big, things are going to come at you and you're going to need to figure it out. But I think my risk taking and the ability to grow at scale the way that we are has led to me. I'm in the middle right now of a deal between 10 and 20 stadiums. And that really came from, going into it with no fear because these people are like, okay, we gave them this, they did it. We gave them that, they did it. All right. Obviously they can scale up. And that provided a lot of opportunity for me. And I think the saying yes and being able to deliver on that yes is really key to what you said earlier about building your own luck or making your own luck.
Yeah.
We always say that. We're like, things may not work out how we wanted them to, or like, oh, this wasn't as big as we thought. But in my head, I'm like, it's still another brick that's stacking up to what we want to get to. And I think a lot of people don't look at it like that, right? They're like, oh, it failed. I'm never doing that again, or I'm going to stop saying yes. But it's like, really, like, it's all adding up to the story. You never know what it's going to lead to, who you're going to meet at the next one, who now is looking out for you because you helped them. Like, it all adds up.
Yeah, dude, that was really beautiful. It reminds me of something that I read earlier, that we are all star weavers, meaning that we are constantly weaving these threads through life that you don't know what's going to connect what. And, I think to give some perspective, when we talk about failures is, you can look at what I did with the hostels, that 16 years and then kind of losing everything. Well, the silver lining to that is like we could have potentially kept our hostels, but we realized that the delta of the debt that we were going to get in by the time we got out was just too great a number. Like our debt would have been just too deep. And I was anticipating just like about 3 to 4 years for before travel came back fully. And it's not even truly fully back yet now. So making that decision was a hard one and could be looked at as a failure. But when we started Moto in 4 years in, I'm making 4 times what I did with a hostel that I did 16 years with, right? So we really scaled our acumen as entrepreneurs to where we're at now from what we've learned in the past,
What
over decade.
what led to, it's like, what was the difference between the 16 years in the hostel and the 4 years in the pizza? Like, what'd you do differently between each one? Or do you think you just chalk it up to being a different industry, or what's been
No, Zach, no, the business is business no matter what you're in. So when because we built 3 locations, right? And building that 3 locations, we begin to understand, systems, logistics, the things about business that you need to control as you scale. And our learning curve was huge in that. So bringing that over to pizza, it wasn't that far of a jump. And, I'm very creative, but I've learned that I'm also really analytical, and I hire a lot of, hire people who are way smarter than me. My team, I have a CEO, Figgy, I have Nora, my COO. She's operations. They're both way, way smarter than me, and they've really taken the helm in driving this business with the logistics and understanding all of the things that we need to know to scale even faster. And so as they fine tune all of these things, they've taught me, how to be much more analytical in everything that we do.
So has that been like, what are the other big things? It sounds like hiring, obviously, that was one of the things you learned from the hostels. What are other like principles that you brought over business wise from what you learned in 16 years? Because now you're 20 years in. Like, what are the biggest keys for you, do you think?
Systems for sure. Everything, like if you can dial in your systems, your scale is going to be easy. I mean, down to the weight of what we use by the gram. You know, um, a lot of the things I would say ounce is better for what we're utilizing. But when I'm making pizza, I weigh to the gram, and I think that's a really good illustration of how much we dial in our systems. Our labor models are super tight. Our cost of goods are super tight. If you saw, if you saw Figgy's Excel sheets on what we do with, all of our logistics, it would blow your mind. We have our next 250 stores planned out on an Excel sheet. So, and that's all about systems that we place in, both with, staffing, cost of goods, labor. I mean, you name it, we've got a system to it.
It's almost like creative externally and then incredibly dialed in behind the scenes. And that's where I think some people miss it, where they're like, they let the artist side of them create too much freedom, not just externally, but internally, where it's like, oh, we'll just kind of roll with it and like, let things go how they go with the business. But it sounds like you're very good at creating a separation between the creativity and the fun, and then like what it actually takes to make this thing work and be sustainable, versus being like, yeah, like this is all fun and we're just having a bunch of fun over here. But then it's like, no, when it comes to like actually creating systems, we create the systems.
I think it's really important to say this as an entrepreneur, to be humble enough to know that you don't know what you don't know. And, bringing in my team that has experience in these things really opened my eyes to what I didn't know. And, being able to kind of step back and let people do what they do best, is really helpful in building the business. And it's true teamwork. I don't see us as a hierarchy like the pyramid shape, right? I like to view us more horizontally. So when I don't like to say I have the final yes or no. I like it to be a kind of a group decision when we do things. And I think as a leader, that's where I've learned to really shine, is to be able to listen and to be able to come up with solutions and ideas that are oriented around all of us building this together.
That's awesome, man. So 250, are you going nationwide then? And is that a 5-year plan, 10-year plan?
I'm actually going global, brother. Like this is
Thinking too small, bitch.
Yeah.
You're thinking too small.
we got some pretty interesting conversations happening right now, for the direction that we want to go. So yeah, I'm truly swinging for the fences. I can see us in Asia first and then Europe. Like I see a lot of growth potential for what we do, our brand. I'm actually going to Tokyo this October to do a pop-up, and kind of, so to speak, test the market, but I feel really confident that we're going to do well there. So I got big plans.
Is that 5 years or 10 years? What's your like?
I think within a few years we're going to have a really good idea the direction that we're going with this. I feel really confident that we're going to be going big here very soon.
Let's go.
That's awesome. And is that like, I don't know how much you're able to say or want to say on this, but the grand vision for Moto, is that like is that still private or is it a public company? You know, are there I mean, there are publicly traded pizza companies, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like
Sure,
what's,
right?
Yeah.
is that what it
Well,
takes to get that kind of scale, 250, or like, can you keep it private and go that big?
no, there's a lot of companies out there that are private that go big. Our intention is not to sell, or an IPO. But what's funny is, we're talking to more and more venture capital right now. And, the idea of doing a Series A raise is on the table. We're actively kind of pursuing a raise probably at the beginning of the year, maybe the end of the year. But there's a lot of interest in what we're doing right now. Um, there has been some talk of it, like, we have that potential to go IPO, but I think it's too early in the game for that
For sure.
conversation. But I think we absolutely have, the ability to grow into something really special that is, known nationally for sure, if not internationally.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, we're watching you very closely. Just like we're not going to scale the 250, but we're at 6 locations ourselves, and we've doubled every size since we've started. We're a little bit longer in the game than Moto is. Obviously, not as long as you are in the game in entrepreneurship. Those are always the questions and things we ask ourselves: is like, what's worth it? How fast to scale? What, like how fast can we manage the scale? And it seems like a lot of what's helped you in managing that scale has been the people around you, which really makes me think like, man, like, we got to really develop and find people, because that's what it's all about. Like I imagine this would be a very difficult journey if you were doing it by yourself.
Hey, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's really it. Like, the team that I have, they're in it for the long haul. They're loving what we're doing. We're having so much fun. And I think that's really important too. Like, manage that, because and I'll be honest, there were points where we were having breakdowns, in the team because we were stretching ourselves so thin. But that's part of the learning process, right? And then as a leader, you can keep redlining that, like um, Steve at Apple was known for pushing that red line a lot, right? And I think it took its toll to a certain degree. Although I love Apple products, by the way, and love what he did. But you can redline things and keep things on the tip of going bad. But why do that when you can actually make it fun, and where everybody comes to work excited for what we're going to do next, and looking for and excited about where we're taking this? Like, I'd rather bring down that red line and have more fun, and where we're able to be stronger as a team, because I think my team is super strong now. We see each other when we have our regular Tuesday meetings, and give each other a hug and talk about what our week was like, and play catch up. And it's it's inspiring to be around them every Tuesday, instead of like the stress of the red line and this and that's going to happen. I think it's a game changer when you scale. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It inspires me to want to go out there and just go crush it. Cause like I just,
Jump, Zach, jump.
I know
You guys already have. I mean, you're on your way.
we've got a big meeting after this, and like that's why I love conversations like this, because we just get inspired by what other people are doing regardless of the industry. It's like, it's fun to see someone so passionate and so excited and doing such amazing things, and just continuing to push and push, and like pushing the right ways, not just like push to push, but like just pushing the envelope, and I mean, what you're doing is incredibly inspiring. Mitch and I have just talked about you like constantly since we met you at our event, because that's why we had to come out to the West Seattle and get the pizza and see the environment. Like, we are obsessed with learning and watching people who are doing stuff like you. So we appreciate you being a beacon.
Oh, you are too kind. Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to wrap up with, Lee? Is there anything else big at Moto that you want people to know?
Well, we have, I can say it here. We have our 2 locations here in Seattle. We got, that we're opening up. We have Pioneer Square at the Smith Tower, which I'm really excited about. That's going to open up this year. And then we're building our first drive-through in Bellingham, which is really exciting because
Oh, cool.
that is going to be a unique experience for us, bringing in something different with delivery. And then we actually just signed our deal, and we are now building out 4 locations in San Diego, California, and which is a big aspect to the growth that we're doing right now. So I'm excited about that. Um, and then drone delivery will begin at the end of this year or beginning of next year, roughly. We're talking about maybe even doing something in Dallas with the drone delivery to get the data going and up off the ground. Yeah, so and there are a few things I can't mention that I'm really excited to talk about, but it's just a little bit longer, and I can share that with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot happening.
I'd say the last thing you should have included is they got the best ice cream in the game, and they don't even talk about it with the
I
chili
know.
oil on there. Like,
I know. I'm bringing something back that I'm actually testing a gummy cone, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, like gummy bear gummy cone, which is gonna kind of crazy because my pizza cone I can't scale it. The pizza cone that I make by hand it's just too hard to scale, and so I got to figure out something different. So yeah, the saucer is gonna have a new game by the end of the summer.
That's awesome. And Moto Pizza shop on Instagram. Where else is the best place for people to follow you? Is that where the best news comes from? Is Instagram?
Yeah. My Instagram is kind of I'm just like there's so much to learn with social media. Like I feel like such a rookie, but I'm really enjoying the social media. I'm adding more to it because I mean, just to add, I think that is such a powerful tool for a small business, and I think it's taken too lightly, and so I'm really taking a run, at the second half of this year at working the social media aspect to the business because I really believe it's super powerful. Yeah, and getting your word out and your message, and your the platforms are so useful in so many ways.
Well, and like your product, obviously, and your brand is so Instagrammable, and obviously, like I think TikTok will start to take off for you as well. I see that you're doing some stuff on there. I'm not a huge TikTok producer, but
Yeah.
Mitch is a TikTok guy. But I think like it's great. It's funny because like even when I search on Moto Pizza Seattle on TikTok, it's like all the people taking videos of your product and like opening the box reveals and things like that. It's pretty amazing. Lots of free advertising and fun
Oh
advertising.
my God. I just learned how to do that, like to see how people tag. And I'm
Yeah.
shocked how much on both on Instagram and TikTok that people, do those reveals. It blows my mind. I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and how he talks about social media. And I've been starting to kind of apply his ideas and concepts to social media. And I feel like it's starting to make a difference.
His book, I got his books right back there on this shelf behind me.
Yeah.
Gary V was like he was a big part of our business journey circle, like before we even opened our business, 2013 to
Wow.
2012, like 2018. I was like, all I listened to is Gary V. So actually that pillow back there, that red pillow is like a hustle mode thing. Gary V did like a giveaway back in like maybe 2016, and I won that pillow. So I've been following Gary V and big fan.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to talk more about that because I'm all in now. So I want to hear more.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have a friend, one of the guys who we do business with in our Renton location. He actually did a sit down with Gary V on his business back in the day when Gary used to bring people in. Funny story too. I was actually on the second episode of it was like the negative version of Ask Gary V. It was called like Salty V. And it was like when he was like upset after a Jets game, he would do this like video of that. I was on one of his episodes of him answering my question, which was highlighted
cool.
my journey back in like 2015, 14 or something like that. So yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have good role models, people who like inspire. And I think that was always the fun thing about Gary V. He was always very like motivational and positive and uplifting. And I see the same thing in your journey, which is probably why you gravitated to watching him as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I really believe he's going to buy the Jets. I have no doubt.
For sure.
I think Lee's gonna be on Gary Vee soon. I could see it.
I think the Jets, that would be the smartest thing for Gary, or for the Jets to do, is let Gary buy the Jets.
100%. 100%.
Well, we appreciate your time, Lee, and we've enjoyed this conversation as always. So appreciate it. Everyone give Lee a follow, and that's the pod.
Wow. Hey, Mitch, Zach, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this. Like, I want to start a podcast and have you guys over, and I want to hit you guys up for your story so we can do it together again. But always inspiring for me to hang out with you guys and do this. Like, I'm really enjoying having you guys as my new friends now, especially that you're in the fitness world. It inspires me to, take care of this more. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. And, the thing that really draw me to you guys and me saying yes was also your guys' inspiration to me, like how you built your business. And I love that because when we get together like that, it amps all of us up. So I really appreciate you and what you've done and bringing me on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, man.
I just want to finish this with real quick with this. Hey guys, everybody out there, take care of yourself and take care of the people around you. And remember, always be kind.